Have you ever felt the cold bite of metal against your fur, the rough scratch of rope cutting into your skin, and wondered if these would be your last sensations in this world? My heart pounds against my chest as I lie here, feeling the distant rumble of approaching doom through the steel rails beneath my body. The crisp autumn air carries the scent of fallen leaves and diesel fuel, mixed with my own fear. The morning had started like any other in my life, with my family in suburban Chicago. The familiar scent of bacon wafting from the kitchen had woken me from my cozy bed in the corner. My tail wagged as I heard the children's footsteps thundering down the stairs, their laughter warming my heart like it had every morning for the past 3 years. I remember pressing my nose against the window, watching the yellow school bus carry away Tommy and Sarah, my young humans who always scratched behind my ears just the way I liked it. The house felt emptier without them, but I knew they would return with their backpacks full of new scents and stories to share with their faithful four-legged friend. The man I thought I knew, who had fed me and walked me every day since I was a puppy, seemed different that morning. His movements were jerky, his voice harder than usual, and there was a smell about him I had never noticed before, sharp and bitter, like the liquid in those bottles he had started keeping in the garage. When he grabbed my collar, I wagged my tail, thinking we were going for our usual morning walk through the neighborhood. The leash clicked into place and I bounded toward the door, excited to explore the fallen leaves and catch up on the latest neighborhood news through my nose. If only I had known what was really happening. The car ride should have been my first warning. We never drove to our walking spot. It was always just around the block. The familiar sense of our neighborhood faded away as we traveled further than ever before. My excitement slowly turned to unease as the buildings grew sparse and the trees thicker. The industrial area we entered filled my sensitive nose with harsh chemical smells and the metallic tang of railroad tracks. Strange sounds echoed off empty warehouses, the clang of distant machinery, the whistle of trains, the flutter of startled pigeons. Everything felt wrong, but I trusted him. He was my human, after all. When he led me away from the car, his grip on the leash was too tight, his steps too determined. I could smell the anxiety rolling off him in waves, see the tension in his shoulders as he looked around furtively. My instincts screamed danger, but years of loyalty and trust kept me following obediently at his heels. The railroad tracks stretched endlessly in both directions, disappearing into the morning mist like silver snakes. The steel rails hummed with a distant energy that made my fur stand on end. Somewhere far away, a train whistle echoed, and my ears perked up at the familiar sound. I didn't understand why we were here. He pulled something from his pocket, rope, thick and rough. My tail, which had been lowering gradually, now tucked firmly between my legs. The smell of fear, my own, filled my nostrils as he began to wrap the rope around my legs. I whimpered, confused and frightened by this betrayal from someone I had loved and trusted. The ropes bit into my fur, tightening around my legs until I could barely move. My human, no, this stranger wearing his face, avoided my eyes as he worked. I could smell salt, tears, mixing with that sharp, bitter scent that clung to him. Why was he doing this? Had I been a bad dog? The cold steel of the tracks pressed against my side as he positioned me between the rails. My heart raced faster as I realized I couldn't move, couldn't run, couldn't follow him back to the car like I desperately wanted to. The rope was too tight, the knots too secure. He had made sure of that. A distant rumble made the tracks vibrate beneath me, growing stronger with each passing second. The sound was familiar. I had heard it many times before from the safety of our backyard. But now it was different. Now it was terrifying. The rails sang with approaching danger, and I was trapped between them. My human stood over me for a long moment, his face a mask I didn't recognize. His hand reached down, and for a brief moment, I thought he would untie me, take me home, tell me I was a good boy again. Instead, he patted my head one last time, his touch heavy with finality. Then he turned and walked away. I watched him disappear into the morning mist, my heart breaking as my world collapsed around me. The rumbling grew stronger, the tracks vibrating with increasing intensity. Somewhere behind me, another train whistle pierced the air, closer now. Much closer. The sound echoed off the empty buildings, a herald of approaching doom. The rope cut deeper as I struggled, panic rising in my chest like a trapped bird. The familiar sense of home seemed so far away now. Tommy's soccer cleats, Sarah's flower-scented shampoo, the warm cookie smell that always filled the kitchen after school. Would I never smell those things again? Would I never see my family again? The rhythmic clacking of wheels on rails grew louder, accompanied by the screech of metal on metal. The morning mist began to clear, revealing the massive shape of an approaching freight train. The ground shook beneath me, and the air filled with the smell of hot metal and diesel fumes. My heart felt like it would burst from fear. Each second stretched into an eternity as I lay there, bound and helpless. The train's horn blasted again, deafeningly close now. I could feel its massive weight through the vibrating rails, sense its unstoppable approach. My muscles strained against the ropes, but they only seemed to get tighter. Through my terror, I became aware of rapid footsteps approaching from somewhere behind me. A new scent cut through the diesel fumes, unfamiliar, human, but different from my betrayer. The footsteps grew closer as the train bore down on my position. Would this new human help me, or were they just here to witness my fate? The massive locomotive was close enough now that its headlight illuminated the tracks around me, creating long shadows in the morning mist. The ground shook violently, and the air pressure changed as tons of steel rushed toward me. In those final moments, as hope began to fade, I heard those running footsteps reach the tracks beside me. The train's massive horn blasted again, so loud it made my ears ring with pain. The sound vibrated through my entire body as I lay helpless on the cold tracks. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but the ropes held firm, cutting deeper into my legs with each desperate struggle. The mighty machine's approaching rumble felt like thunder in my bones. The acrid smell of hot metal and burning diesel grew stronger with each passing second. Through my terror, I could feel tiny pieces of gravel digging into my fur from the track bed. The steel rails sang with an increasingly high-pitched whine that hurt my sensitive ears. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode. I could see the train conductor now, a small figure in the massive window of the approaching locomotive. His face changed from concentration to horror as he spotted me on the tracks. The train's brakes screamed in protest, but I knew enough about these massive machines from my walks near the railroad to understand it couldn't stop in time. The ropes seemed to tighten with every movement, a cruel reminder of my human's betrayal. My mind raced with confused questions. Had I not been a good enough dog? Had I failed him somehow? The bitter scent that had clung to him in recent weeks mixed with my memories of happier times, creating a confusing whirlwind of emotions. The running footsteps were closer now, accompanied by rapid breathing and the smell of sweat and determination. A man's voice shouted something I couldn't understand over the train's thunderous approach. Hope and fear battled in my chest as I wondered about this new human's intentions. Would they help me or just watch? Time seemed to slow down as the train bore down on my position. Each click of its wheels on the track joints felt like a countdown to my fate. The vibrations through the rails had become so intense that my teeth chattered. The locomotive's bright headlight created shifting shadows that made everything seem surreal and nightmarish. I could smell other humans now, workers in the nearby buildings who had come out to investigate the train's urgent horn blasts. Their voices carried notes of panic and concern, but they seemed frozen in place by the horrifying scene unfolding before them. None were as close as the running man, whose footsteps now reached the edge of the tracks. The ropes had cut off circulation to my paws, making them feel numb and useless. Each attempt to break free sent sharp pains through my legs and chest. The rough fiber had rubbed away fur in some places, leaving my skin raw and burning. Yet still I struggled, driven by pure survival instinct. The sound of the train was now all-consuming, drowning out everything else except the pounding of my heart. The ground shook so violently that small stones bounced between the railroad ties. The pressure wave of displaced air pushed against my fur like an invisible hand. Death felt closer with each passing moment. Memories flashed through my mind. Tommy teaching me to fetch, Sarah sneaking me treats under the dinner table, my warm bed by the fireplace. the joy of running through sprinklers on hot summer days. The happy life I had known seemed like a distant dream now, fading away as rapidly as the train approached. The man's footsteps finally reached me, and I caught his scent properly for the first time. Sweat, coffee, and something else. Kindness? His hands touched my fur, and I flinched, remembering the last human hands that had touched me. But these hands were different. They were trying to free me, not bind me. The train's horn blasted one final time, a sound so loud and close it seemed to shake the very air around us. The ground trembled as tons of steel bore down on our position. I could feel the man's hands shaking as he worked frantically at the ropes, his breath coming in desperate gasps. Time had run out. In those terrifying moments, I understood that this stranger was risking his own life to save mine. His fingers worked desperately at the knots while the train's shadow fell over us both. The smell of his fear mixed with mine, but there was no hesitation in his movements. He had chosen to help, knowing the danger. The ropes were starting to loosen, but too slowly. Each second felt like an eternity as the man struggled with the tight knots. The train was so close now that its heat washed over us in waves. The rails screamed under the pressure of emergency brakes, but the massive machine's momentum was unstoppable. I felt the man's muscles tense as he made a final, desperate decision. His arms wrapped around my body, rope and all. The smell of his determination overpowered even the diesel fumes as he gathered his strength. The train's presence was overwhelming now, its massive form blocking out the morning sun. With a surge of desperate strength, the man lifted me from the tracks, ropes and all. The movement sent shards of pain through my bound legs, but I hardly noticed. The train's rushing wind pulled at my fur as the man stumbled backward. We were moving, but would it be fast enough? Time compressed into a single moment of pure terror as the train thundered past, close enough that I could have touched it with my nose. The wind of its passing whipped around us like a tornado, filling the air with dust and debris. The man's arms tightened protectively around me as we fell backward together. We landed hard on the gravel beside the tracks, the impact driving the breath from both of us. The train roared past in an endless parade of rattling cars, each one a reminder of how close we had come to death. The man's heart hammered against my side as he held me close, both of us trembling. My rescuer's hands were shaking as he finally began to work on the ropes again, this time without the pressure of imminent death. I could smell blood where the rough gravel had scraped his arms during our fall. Yet his touch remained gentle as he carefully unwound the bonds that had nearly cost me my life. As feeling returned to my freed limbs, bringing pins and needles of pain, I realized how completely this stranger had changed my fate. He had risked everything to save a dog he didn't know, while the human I had trusted had left me to die. The contrast filled me with a confusion that would take time to understand. As the last train car clattered past, the full impact of what had just happened washed over me. My legs trembled as circulation returned, bringing waves of painful tingles throughout my body. The man's gentle hands continued to work at the remaining ropes, his touch careful around the places where my skin was raw. His voice murmured soft, soothing words that, while I couldn't understand them, carried warmth and comfort. The gathering crowd of onlookers pressed closer, their voices a mix of concern and relief. My rescuer's body language shifted subtly, becoming protective as he positioned himself between me and the approaching humans. I could smell the lingering adrenaline on him, mixed with genuine concern for my well-being. Something about his presence felt safe, despite my recent betrayal. Each rope that fell away brought another surge of relief, both physical and emotional. The man took extra care with the bindings that had cut deepest into my fur, pausing whenever I flinched from pain. The morning air felt different now, no longer thick with terror but filled with the possibility of survival. I had been given a second chance at life. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing moment. The sound made me tense initially, memories of the train's horn still fresh in my mind. But my rescuer's steady heartbeat and calm demeanor helped keep my fear in check. His hands never stopped their gentle work of freeing me completely. The final rope fell away, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could move freely again. My legs were weak and shaky, barely able to support my weight. The man's hand steadied me as I attempted to stand, his touch communicating patience and understanding. I no longer flinched from human contact. Other humans in uniforms arrived, their cars marked with flashing lights that reflected off the train tracks. They approached cautiously, speaking in low voices to my rescuer. I pressed closer to his legs, finding comfort in his familiar scent now. He had proven himself different from the one who had betrayed me. The police officers took photos of the ropes and asked my rescuer questions, their voices carrying tones of anger when they looked at the bindings that had held me. A woman in different uniform, animal control, I would later learn, approached with a gentle demeanor and a medical kit. My rescuer's hand on my head kept me calm. The animal control officer's examination was thorough but gentle, her trained hands checking for serious injuries. The familiar smell of antiseptic filled my nose as she cleaned the rope burns on my legs. Through it all, my rescuer stayed close, his presence a constant reassurance that I was safe now. More humans arrived with cameras and microphones, their excited energy creating a buzz in the air. My rescuer shielded me from their flashing lights and loud questions, his body language clearly protective. I understood then that he wasn't just a momentary savior. He genuinely cared about what happened to me. The animal control officer spoke with my rescuer for a long time, her voice serious but kind. I watched his face as he nodded, his hand absently stroking my fur. The conversation seemed important, though I couldn't understand the words. Something about the future, my future, was being decided. When they tried to lead me to the animal control vehicle, panic flared in my chest. The memory of my last car ride was too fresh, too painful. My rescuer seemed to sense my fear, speaking quietly to the officer. His calm voice helped ease my racing heart as he explained something to her. Instead of the animal control vehicle, I was guided to my rescuer's car. The familiar scent of coffee and kindness filled the interior, mixed with something that smelled like other dogs. This wasn't the sterile, scary vehicle I had feared. This felt almost like going home, though home had become a confusing concept. The drive was gentle, my rescuer speaking softly to me the whole time. Each stoplight and turn was taken with care, as if he understood how fragile I felt. The world outside the windows was unfamiliar, but for the first time since that morning, I didn't feel afraid of where I was being taken. We arrived at a place that smelled of many animals, a veterinary clinic, I would learn. The familiar scents of medicine and other dogs filled my nose as we entered. But unlike the cold fear of the railroad tracks, this place held an atmosphere of healing and care. The veterinarian's examination was more detailed than the first checkup, her gentle hands finding every rope burn and bruise. My rescuer stayed within my sight the whole time, his presence helping me remain calm as she cleaned and bandaged my wounds. His voice held worry when she pointed out the deeper injuries. Something changed in those moments under the bright clinic lights. As the veterinarian worked, my rescuer's hand never left my head, his touch conveying a promise of protection. I began to understand that this human was different from the one who had betrayed me. This one had chosen to save me, to care for me. The next stop was another building that smelled strongly of dogs and cats. A shelter, but a comfortable one. The staff greeted my rescuer by name, suggesting he was familiar with this place. Their voices were kind as they discussed what would happen next. I stayed close to my rescuer's legs, still uncertain about new humans. The shelter staff prepared a comfortable bed in a quiet room, not a cage like I had feared. My rescuer sat with me as I explored the space, his presence helping me feel secure in these new surroundings. The bed was soft, the water bowl was full, and for the first time since that morning, I felt truly safe. As evening approached, my rescuer prepared to leave, but something had fundamentally changed. The terror of the morning had been replaced by a tentative hope. His final pat on my head felt like a promise, not of ownership, but of care and protection. I watched him go without the panic I had felt earlier. That night, as I rested on the soft bed, my mind processed the incredible turn my life had taken. From the depths of betrayal to the heights of human kindness, I had experienced both extremes in a single day. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that while one human had tried to end my life, another had given me a new beginning. The days that followed brought a gentle rhythm of healing and recovery. Each morning, shelter staff would clean and rebandage my wounds, their touches always careful and kind. The rope burns slowly began to heal, leaving patches of fur growing back in different directions. What remained constant was my rescuer's daily visits, his familiar scent bringing comfort and growing trust. The police came several times to photograph my injuries and take statements. I could smell their anger when they looked at the healing wounds, but their hands were gentle when they patted my head. My rescuer was always present during these visits, his calm presence helping me stay relaxed. Through it all, I began to understand that humans were working to prevent what had happened to me from happening to others. Gradually, I started looking forward to the sound of approaching footsteps instead of fearing them. The shelter staff brought me special treats and took extra time to help me feel comfortable around new people. My rescuer would sit with me for hours, sometimes reading from papers he brought, his voice becoming a soothing constant in my new life. The veterinarian seemed pleased with my physical recovery, but everyone understood that the emotional healing would take longer. Loud noises still made me jump, especially train whistles from the distant tracks, but my rescuer would sit with me during these moments, his steady heartbeat helping to calm my fears. I began to learn that not all loud sounds meant danger. Other dogs at the shelter helped in their own way, their wagging tails and playful energy gradually drawing me out of my shell. The sound of approaching footsteps became exciting again, especially when I recognized my rescuer's particular walk. The staff started letting me spend time in the play yard, where the sun helped heal both my body and spirit. The media attention continued, with reporters coming to tell my story. My rescuer always made sure these visits were on my terms, never pushing me to interact if I wasn't comfortable. I learned that my story was helping other dogs, making humans more aware and vigilant. The thought that my experience could prevent others from suffering gave new meaning to my survival. As my physical wounds healed, my rescuer started bringing me on short walks around the shelter grounds. Each successful venture helped rebuild my confidence, his patient presence a constant reassurance. The world began to feel less threatening, though I still stayed close to his side. These walks became the highlight of my days. One morning, I overheard an exciting conversation between my rescuer and the shelter staff. His scent carried happiness and anticipation as they discussed something important. The staff brought out papers, and there was much excited talking. I didn't understand the words, but I could feel that something wonderful was about to happen. The next day, instead of our usual walk around the shelter grounds, my rescuer led me to his car. This time, there was no fear of the unknown. His car had become a place of safety and adventure. The drive was longer than usual, taking us through quiet neighborhoods until we reached a house with a fenced yard. As we walked up the driveway, I could smell other dogs and the lingering scent of recent play. My rescuer opened the front door and I was greeted by a warm home filled with comfortable furniture and dog beds in every corner. Two friendly dogs came to welcome me, their tails wagging in gentle acceptance. The house tour revealed a spacious backyard with soft grass and sunny spots perfect for napping. Tennis balls and rope toys lay scattered about, well loved by their previous users. My rescuer showed me a special bed near his desk, explaining in his gentle voice that this was my new home. I was finally where I belonged. The other dogs, Max and Luna, I learned, became my teachers in this new life. They showed me the best sunbathing spots, when to expect meals, and how to ask for belly rubs. Their confident happiness was contagious, helping me remember how to be a carefree dog again. They became the siblings I never knew I needed. My rescuer's routine became my routine. Morning walks, afternoon play sessions, and quiet evenings together. The nightmares of screeching trains and tight ropes began to fade, replaced by dreams of running in the yard and playing with my new family. Each day brought new healing and joy. The rope burns healed completely, fur growing back to cover the scars. But more importantly, my trust in humans began to heal too. My rescuer's friends would visit, and I learned to accept pets and treats from new people. The fear of betrayal gradually gave way to an understanding that most humans were kind. My story continued to make a difference in the world. My rescuer would sometimes take me to events where I helped teach children about being kind to animals. My presence seemed to touch people's hearts, and I could smell their emotion when they heard about my journey. Every person who promised to help animals in need made my survival more meaningful. The police eventually found the human who had tried to end my life. I was asked to identify him, but my rescuer made sure I felt safe during this process. The man's bitter scent brought back fearful memories, but I was stronger now. My brave rescuer stood beside me, and I knew I would never be hurt like that again. Time passed, and the railroad tracks became just a distant memory. My life filled with joy, playing fetch in the yard, cuddling with my dog siblings, and accepting love from my rescuer who had become my true family. The trust between us grew stronger each day, built on a foundation of that first brave act of salvation. Each evening, as I curled up in my special bed near my rescuer's desk, I would reflect on how far I'd come. From the terrifying moment on the tracks to this peaceful life, my journey had been one of healing and hope. My rescuer didn't just save my life that day, he gave me a whole new world of love and trust. The scars under my fur remained as a reminder of my past, but they no longer defined me. I was no longer the frightened dog tied to the railroad tracks. I had become a survivor, a teacher, and most importantly, a beloved family member. My story had transformed from one of betrayal to one of triumph and unconditional love. Sometimes, in the quiet moments of the evening, as I lay in my favorite spot by my rescuer's desk, I think back to that fateful morning on the railroad tracks. The memory no longer brings terror, but rather a profound appreciation for how life can change in an instant. The cold steel rails and cruel ropes have become distant shadows, replaced by the warmth of love and family. My story, I've learned, has become more than just my own. It's a testament to the power of human kindness. Every morning when I wake up in my soft bed, surrounded by the love of my dog siblings and my rescuer, I marvel at how different life is now. The scared, betrayed dog tied to those tracks seems like a different being entirely. My fur has grown back completely over the scars, much like how new trust has grown over old fears. Each day brings new joys and adventures, proving that even the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures. The children who come to hear my story at awareness events often reach out to pet me, their gentle touches full of compassion and love. I stand proudly beside my rescuer as he tells them about that morning, knowing that our story helps teach the importance of kindness toward animals. Their promises to always help animals in need fill my heart with hope. Each young face that lights up with understanding makes my journey more meaningful. My dog siblings, Max and Luna, have taught me so much about trust and joy. They showed me how to play again, how to enjoy the simple pleasures of a sunny afternoon in the yard. Together, we chase balls, share treats, and curl up in warm patches of sunlight. Their acceptance helped heal parts of me that even my rescuer couldn't reach, showing me what it means to be part of a pack. The nightmares have faded now, replaced by dreams of running through grass and playing with my family. The sound of trains in the distance no longer sends me into panic. Instead, they remind me of how far I've come. My rescuer's steady presence has taught me that love is stronger than fear, and that trust once rebuilt can be more powerful than ever. My story continues to make a difference in the world, reaching people through social media and news articles. Each share, each comment, each person moved to action helps prevent other animals from suffering. The viral video of my rescue has inspired countless donations to animal shelters and encouraged many to adopt rescued pets. My near tragedy has become a catalyst for positive change. The man who tried to end my life was brought to justice, but I've learned not to dwell on that part of my story. Instead, I focus on the countless acts of kindness I've experienced since that day. From the shelter staff who helped me heal, to the veterinarians who treated my wounds, to every person who has shown me that humanity's capacity for love far outweighs its capacity for cruelty. My rescuer, who I now know simply as Dad, has given me more than just a second chance at life. He's shown me what unconditional love truly means, how patience and kindness can heal even the deepest wounds. Our bond, forged in that moment of crisis on the railroad tracks, grows stronger with each passing day. His brave choice to risk his life for mine led to a lifetime of love and trust. Looking back on my journey, I understand now that survival was just the beginning. The real miracle wasn't just being saved from those tracks, it was learning to love and trust again, finding a new family, and discovering purpose in helping others. My scars tell a story not of victimhood, but of resilience and hope. They remind me that even the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures. As I rest here in my forever home, surrounded by the love of my family, I know that my story isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. From the terrified dog bound to the railroad tracks to a beloved family member and ambassador for animal welfare, my journey has shown that love and courage can overcome any obstacle. Every day, I choose to focus not on the human who left me to die, but on the one who risked everything to save me, and on all the humans since who have shown me that kindness is the strongest force in the world.